Raider Nation, what's going on? You're watching the Raiders Report. It's Mitchell Renz here from Chat Sports. And coming up, the latest news and rumors around the Las Vegas Raiders. I am recording this video on Saturday before the Chiefs-Dolphins game, so just heads up on that. If any other type of new information comes out by the time this video comes out, I'm going to do my best here to update you guys on the pinned comment or in the description of today's video. But the way that I look at this show is this. It is every single thing that I believe Raider Nation should know from what happened on a very, very busy Saturday. And, you know, I love saying this because I fully believe it. Where there's smoke, there's fire. And the smoke for me really started late Friday night and everything that happened on Saturday to this point right now. There's a lot to get into. But here's the thing, man. When the Raiders make a move, we will go live. When they hire a GM, we're going to rock and roll on this show. When they hire a head coach, we're going to party and celebrate it. When the Raiders make any move, the offseason, free agency, trades, the draft, I promise you this. You might not agree with everything that I say on this channel, but to me, that's what family's about. Let's have a healthy conversation. Let's talk about what's best for the Las Vegas Raiders. Just because we disagree doesn't mean you're dumb, doesn't mean I'm dumb. But I tell you this is the most excited that I've been for a Raiders offseason in a very long time. But also, let's hire AP. All right, let's get into the latest here around the general manager search for the Silver and Black. So the Raiders, they had an interview with Terrance Gray, the director of player personnel for the Buffalo Bills on Friday. I heard that the interview did go well, and to be honest, I don't really anticipate that an interview is not going to go the way that people anticipate. However, with that being said, I do not expect the Raiders to hire Terrance Gray. So Gray is a really good dude. He's done a lot of good things for the Buffalo Bills, and for people who have watched the show plenty over the past week, y'all will know that I went to high school with a kid who's right now works for the Bills, and his boss is actually Terrance Gray. And just hearing from what he's told me about Gray, saying he's a really good dude. He helps out a lot of the college scouting department, does a lot of good stuff for the scouting department, which is something that I've really wanted the Raiders to pay a little bit more attention to because, let's face it, we need to do better in the draft. However, Terrance Gray had a good GM interview. I just don't think that he's going to be the next GM of the Silver and Black. One guy who's got a legitimate shot is Ed Dodds. And Ed Dodds, can you fix the title on that for me real quick? Interview with the Raiders on Friday. If Dodds is hired, it doesn't mean that Harbaugh is going to be the head coach. And this is a very, very big deal for me. And the reason why that I say that is because, you know, on this show, it was anticipated, and I was told by a source before that because Dodds and because Harbaugh are such good friends, that a lot of people, myself included, thought, hey, man, if Dodds is hired to be the next GM, that it's going to be Jim Harbaugh. Here's the thing, though. Dodds had a source reach out to me, not Dodds himself, but had a source reach out to me late Friday night that said, I just want to let you know, if Dodds is hired, it doesn't mean that Harbaugh is the head coach. So that's one of those things where, again, more smoke leading to potential fire. Then, listening into Graphic Raider, he was also talking to Stu on his live show. Stu texts Dodds and says, you know, Dodds looks at him and goes, I want to finish where I started, which is the type of Raider mentality that I love to have. And I'm telling you all right now, with Adam Peters going to the Washington Commanders, to me, the best GM that would help out the Raiders is Ed Dodds. To me, he's the best guy available. Now, I don't know if that's the route that the Raiders are going to go because he's not the favorite to get the job. If I was Mark Davis, I would hire Ed Dodds and I would hire Antonio Pierce. That's the route that I would personally go. But the important note there is that if Dodds is hired, it's not going to be Jim. It's not a guarantee that it's going to be Jim Harbaugh. Let's talk about Champ Kelly. He interviewed with the Raiders on Saturday, and his interview with the Carolina Panthers, from what I understand, went into, quote, overtime. It went very, very well. And a lot of times when an interview goes a little bit longer, they stay, maybe some drinks get involved, and who knows what exactly is going to happen. But what I understand is if the Raiders don't go with Champ Kelly, they could potentially look to go in a different direction. But Kelly, to me, I would say this is either going to be the Raiders GM or he is going to be the Carolina Panthers GM. one of those two options is absolutely on the table. And for a lot of people that listen to Maxx Crosby's podcast on Saturday, Crosby wants AP and he wants Champ Kelly. We'll see what Mark Davis decides to do. But this is going to be the pinned comment on today's show, because the Las Vegas Raiders, they are going to hire a GM before they hire a head coach, which is what good organizations do. It's especially what the Raiders should do, considering the fact that they went after John Gruden, epic fail. They went after Josh McDaniels, epic fail. But I got to know from the nation out there, who do you think will be the Raiders GM this season? My answer is it's between Champ Kelly and Ed Dodds for Raiders general manager. I would say that Kelly has a 75% chance to get the job. Dodds right now has a 25% chance to get the job. It's not going to go to anybody else. They have interviewed every single candidate potentially. So they've interviewed Trey Brown, Kelly from the Denver Broncos. They have interviewed Terrance Gray. They have interviewed, I believe, all 7 candidates. Telesco as well on top of that. Like, the Raiders at this point, I think, know what direction that they're going to go in. And it's going to be between Champ Kelly and Ed Dodds for the next Raiders general manager. And as soon as they name him, you already know. We're going to be live here on the show. But hey, man, before I get into the latest going on around the Las Vegas Raiders head coaching search and the latest around all the Maxx Crosby trade rumors, because maybe that's why you guys clicked on this video, I got to give a shout out to today's sponsor, Game Times. And if anybody is out there looking for last-minute tickets, download the Game Time app today. $20 off with code RaidersChat. And if you're like me, I am a last-minute type of person, right? I got a busy life. And when I say busy life, I don't got kids yet, but I got a dog, and he takes up a lot of my time. I got a fiance, but most importantly, my job. I am always on call. I know I'm not a doctor, but that's how I treat this job. I'm always on call. So it always scares me to buy tickets in advance, because I'm like, I might not be able to go to that. So what I like to do is I like to wait at the last minute, and then I'll get a ticket. So one of the things that Game Time does is, if you know, like, you're going to go to a city, right? You can look up Las Vegas, Dallas, Denver, whatever city that you're in currently, or if you're planning on going to, you can look at events for the weekend. You can look at popular events in that city. You can look at sporting events, NFL, obviously no football games right now for the Raiders, but the Golden Knights right now, their games are going on. What I personally like to do is wait to the very, very last moment, because what Game Time does the best, I think, out of anybody in the business, is they go, well, wait a minute, why would I not sell a ticket and not put anybody in that seat when I know that person's going to buy a beer? I know that person's going to buy a soda. I know that person's going to buy some popcorn, maybe some chicken tenders. I don't know about you. I don't know many people that go to a game and don't purchase a food, some drink, whatever. So they'll sell those tickets to you for a very, very cheap price, because they know, we're going to get our money back, because you're going to go and you're going to spend money elsewhere, which is why I love Game Time. So if you're kind of a procrastinator, and let's face it, I'm a procrastinator through and through. So if you're like, hey, Mitch, I'm with you. I'm a busy dude, busy woman. I never know what's going to go on in my life, and I like to wait till the last minute, not because you do it on purpose, but because you live a busy lifestyle. Go check out Game Time. That link's going to be available to y'all down in the comments, down in the description of today's show. All right, let's get in here to the latest going on around Maxx Crosby. Before I talk about the trade rumors, let's talk about the injury update from Maxx Crosby. So Crosby was live on his show and was talking about his injury, and he said that he was going to have injury on his thumb, and he was going to have surgery on his knee, and he's going to be fine for next season. So let's just put that out there. About a month and a half ago, when all the horrible information that was coming around Max's knee, I said that he was going to have knee surgery, which, again, it was expected. The thumb surgery, though, really wasn't all that expected. The surgery is going to be next Wednesday, and that's just coming off of what Crosby said on his podcast. And when I hear next Wednesday, personally for me, I think of next Wednesday, like not this Wednesday coming up, but the following Wednesday. However, I have talked to people close to Crosby, and it does sound like this upcoming Wednesday, he's going to have surgery on his thumb, and he's out in Los Angeles, which I don't know if you guys saw him, like, dapping up Kevin Durant, dapping up James Harden, who's like his favorite player of all time, which hearing him talk about that on his podcast is cool, because He was talking about how Dwayne Wade's like one of his favorite players of all time and how Maxx Crosby's a Heat fan. And, he was talking about all that kind of stuff because he's like, man, I grew up as a kid just like all y'all, and I grew up, admiring some of these athletes that have like that different mindset and hearing all that, really dope shit. But from an injury standpoint, he's going to have surgery on his thumb. He's going to have surgery on his knee. He's going to be fine, though, for the regular season. But let's go talk about these trade rumors, right? So Ian Rappaport on Saturday put out, Crosby will explore a trade request if Antonio Pierce isn't retained. Crosby wants to remain a Raider for life. That I know. He tweeted out #HireAP on Friday. Now, I know a lot of people out there are kind of like wondering what's true, what's not true. Let me just tell you this right now. And if you could put me up full screen, this is how I would look at this, right? And to me, everything that Ian Rappaport, and I'll show you the quote here in just a second, everything Ian Rappaport put out there is 100% true. Maxx Crosby saying what he did, I think proves the fact of what Rappaport said is 100% true. If the Raiders do not keep Antonio Pierce, Maxx Crosby will have an open mind about a trade. And the way that I would say that to anybody out there is this. If who out there is in a relationship, I want you to look at your wife, your significant other, your husband right now and say, you know what? We're not going to get a divorce. However, I'm going to keep my options open if you know what I mean? It's like you're going to keep your options open. I know this. If I told Alex right now, we're not going to break up, but I'm going to go out there and I'm going to keep my options open and look at other people. That's basically a breakup. That's basically a divorce, basically a trade. So let's talk about what Ian Rappaport had to say here, though, on the next Raiders head coach. The Las Vegas Raiders also continue to weigh a potential pursuit of Jim Harbaugh, who led his alma mater to its first national championship in college football playoff era on Monday night. However, sources say there remains support among many in the extended Raider family for the interim coach Antonio Pierce, including in the locker room with all-pro edge rusher Maxx Crosby, expressing he will explore a trade request if Pierce isn't retained, according to sources. Do you want to know who Ian Rappaport's sources are? Maxx Crosby and his team. That's exactly who Ian Rappaport's sources are. I want to be a Raider for life is what Maxx Crosby said, for sure. But if we go in a different direction, there is nothing that is off the table. So when I hear that, okay, like I know what Crosby said. I was listening to his podcast, and I see people what they're saying on social media here and there. But what people have to look at is Maxx Crosby and his team. They talk to either Ian Rappaport or his team because exactly what Ian Rappaport reported on Saturday is exactly what Maxx Crosby said on his podcast. And for Crosby to say that anything is on the table, like, all I want you guys to do right now is take the emotion out of it. Take your Raider fandom out of it. I love Maxx through and through. I want Maxx to be a Raider for life. I told him that today. However, though, with Maxx saying that he's open to anything on the table, that is a nice way to say, like, yeah, if the Raiders don't bring back Antonio Pierce, I'm going to try to get traded. Like, that's the way that I interpret it. But also on top of that, Ian Rappaport quote tweets, okay? Quote tweets what he reported today, and right before Crosby told everybody on his podcast what his thoughts are about if AP's not back, Ian Rappaport quote tweets it and says, Maxx Crosby podcast is now live. He addresses a potential trade request. So what I read into that is everything Rapp put out today is straight from Crosby and his team. And if you don't believe that, you just got to pay a little bit more closer attention to a lot of the smoke going on. I'm not sitting up here saying Crosby doesn't want to be a Raider because I'm telling you this right now. Crosby wants to be a Raider. He wants to be a Raider for life. He loves his team through and through. He loves Raider Nation. I mean, he was smiling talking about being out in L.A. and how, the Raiders own L.A., how they own Oakland, how they own Las Vegas, and, how, like, this fan base has really rallied behind him. I've talked to his family members, his mom, his dad, like, they love the Raiders, and they want him to be a Raider for life. But he's also in this position where he's in the prime of his career, and how many people out there agree with this statement? The most valuable thing in life is time. And if you feel like that you're wasting your time, I mean, you shouldn't do that. And I don't blame Maxx for wanting stability. I don't blame Maxx for wanting to know what his future holds because of all the different head coaches, all the different GMs, all the different DCs. And for the first time in his career, he's a part of a very special defense. He wants to keep that together. He wants Antonio Pierce. But let's not get it twisted. What Ian Rappaport reported today is 100% factual and 100% from Maxx Crosby. If the Raiders do not keep Antonio Pierce, Maxx and his team will explore trade options. And if that happens, if Maxx gets traded, goodbye Davante Adams. Get ready for another rebuild. And some of y'all are like, Mitch, I don't care. Give Jim Harbaugh 5 first-round picks. That's fine. But then what does that tell every other superstar athlete? What does that tell every other superstar player that comes to the Raiders? You can't trust Mark Davis. We'll see what ends up happening, though. All right, let's get into the latest here around Antonio Pierce. He interviewed with the Titans on Saturday, and according to Adam Schefter, Pierce is the favorite to be the Raiders head coach. Rappaport, as I just mentioned, Crosby will explore a trade request if AP isn't retained. Here's what I know about Antonio Pierce. Again, I'm somebody that follows a lot of smoke. And when you look at Vegas a lot of times is always ahead of trends in terms of coaching odds, right? So, Antonio Pierce, last week, it was reported that I ripped somebody online because I was like, how do you not even have Antonio Pierce in your top 5 of next head coaching odds? And then comes out Antonio Pierce minus 200. Then it comes Antonio Pierce minus 400. Minus 400 to go up to there. Schefter to report what he did. Rappaport to report what he did. Crosby to tell you what he said. Davante Adams to say what he said a week ago. I'm a big believer that Antonio Pierce is going to be the next head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders. So here's your opportunity to sound off down in the comments. Who do you think will be the Raiders head coach this season? This season, 2024. Who's it going to be? Who do you think it's going to be? Do you think it's going to be AP? If you think it's going to be AP, I want you to spam AP down below. To me, it's Antonio Pierce. I want the Raiders to go with Antonio Pierce. And the way that I've always done this show, and to be honest, one of the things that pisses me off with a lot of times, like the nation, they're like, oh, Mitch, you flip-flop with your answers. And to me in life, if you don't change based on trends, you're going to fall behind. Like, if anybody out there invests in stocks, if anybody out there invests in anything, if you're like, I'm going to invest in this through and through no matter what, you're not going to make a lot of money. But to me, I've always said that I would want Antonio Pierce, Patrick Graham, that is greater than Jim Harbaugh. However, Jim Harbaugh is greater than just Antonio Pierce. Well, guess what? My opinion on that completely changes because if Maxx Crosby is going to demand a trade, if Antonio Pierce is the head coach, I'm putting AP right back into the front here. The only option Mark Davis has is to hire Antonio Pierce. And to all the fans out there that are ripping on Maxx Crosby for speaking up, I'm going to say this, shame on you. Like, if I believed in Mark Davis, I'd be mad at Crosby for speaking up. But how can you be mad at a locker room that had to deal with all the bullshit that they had to deal with McDaniels? Like, McDaniels was I'm better than you, a God complex guy that he thought he was the smartest guy in the room. You go from that to Antonio Pierce. Like, imagine being at your job and your boss is one of the people from Horrible Bosses. That's what Josh McDaniels was. He was Kevin Spacey from Horrible Bosses. Now you have a guy that actually wants to listen to you. He's a guy that actually wants to hear what you have to say. I don't care if you make millions of dollars. I don't care if you make minimum wage. Nobody wants to work for an asshole. Nobody wants to work for somebody that they don't think that he gives a shit about what they have to say. The Raiders finally feel like that they have a head coach that hears what they say. And here's the crazy part. They were able to win football games. You beat the Chiefs, you beat the Chargers, you beat the Broncos. You ended the season on a high note. For that reason, Mark Davis has one option. Actually, he has two options. Excuse me. Mark Davis has two options. First option, you hire Antonio Pierce. Option number 2, if you're not going to hire Antonio Pierce, you better sell the team right now, because I legitimately think if Crosby demands a trade, Davante Adams demands a trade, and you go down the rabbit hole that you're about to go down if you don't hire AP, I'm a Raider fan through and through. I'll always be here, man. But you're going to lose a lot of people. you're going to lose a lot of money. And the NFL just released the most expensive game in the NFL. Right now, on average, it costs a Raiders family of four $1,340 to go to a game at average price. The Raiders have the most expensive ticket in the biz. You better make sure you don't lose your fan base there, Mark. Before I end today's show, let's get in here to the latest around Jim Harbaugh. Harbaugh is going to interview for the Chargers job. Harbaugh's interest is obviously growing in the NFL. It's from Ian Rappaport. 7 head coaching jobs open right now. But with, again, a lot of the smoke going on right now around Antonio Pearson, myself included, I thought this was an AP versus Harbaugh battle. I don't really think it is anymore. Like, to me, what I see end up going down is I'm following a lot of the circles here. I'm following a lot of Vegas. I'm following odds. I'm following insiders, talking to the people that I talk to. I'm going to be real with y'all, okay? And here's the thing that people got to realize. If you hire Antonio Pierce, the team that I think is the most likely to hire Jim Harbaugh is, in fact, the Los Angeles Chargers. So I just want y'all to prepare for that. If you hire AP, I believe Harbaugh is going to go to the Chargers, which means you got Sean Payton and you got Andy Reid, which are 3 legendary coaches in the AFC West. All right, y'all. This Chiefs game against the Dolphins is getting ready to get going here. If you're watching this live, let's turn up here. Let's have a hell of a night. If you're not watching this live, make sure you click that subscribe button and know when they hire a GM, I'm going to be live. When they hire a head coach, I'm going to be live. And to stay up to date on everything going on around the Las Vegas Raiders, click that subscribe button right now.